Hey y'all, just so you know, we're going to be talking about this week's episodes of In Treatment. So that means spoilers are ahead. There's also some explicit language in this podcast. So please take care of yourself while listening. Hey everybody, my name is Brandon Kyle Goodman. My pronouns are he and they, and I am an actor, a writer, and an activist. I am queer, and I'm black, and I'm fabulous.
Yes. And I am Dr. Janelle S. Pfeiffer. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and a professor, and also a mom too, so I stay busy.
Yes, and also fabulous.
And my pronouns are she, her.
And welcome to In Session, the official companion podcast of the HBO show In Treatment, where we deconstruct what happens in the show to understand how therapy works.
But remember, this show is not a substitute for therapy, so reach out to a professional if you need. All right, let's get started.
You can do this. You got everything that it takes.
All right, y'all. So we are kicking off our final episode today, which is so sad, Dr. Janelle. This is the last episode.
Don't make me cry.
I know, but it's an exciting one because we have the one and only, the woman of the hour, Uzo Aduba. Uzo, of course, plays the ever so complex Dr. Brooke Taylor. Now, we got the chance to interview Uzo while she was at her home, so you might hear a couple, recording sounds and some things happening in the background. It's a pandemic. We all at home, you know how it is. But the conversation was really, really beautiful.
And then after that, we'll move to thinking about how the show wrapped up the storylines for our main characters, Eladio, Colin, and Layla. Plus, we'll get into that process, the sometimes tricky process of knowing how and when to end a therapeutic relationship. But let's get started off with Uzo.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
It's wonderful.
Yes, of course.
Yes. Well, so let's start off with what first attracted you to this role of Dr. Brooke Taylor?
What first attracted me to the role was I was attracted to the question first of why do people go to therapy? Right? And then I was also impacted by Dr. Brooke's pain and loss, the experience of pain and loss, and what that feels like, looks like, sitting in the opposite chair that I'm familiar with.
I'm wondering about the research you did for the role. Like, were there any references that helped you understand Brooke, or were there any people in your life that Brooke was modeled after? Like, how were you able to get inside of Dr. Brooke?
I know 3 therapists in my life, but one in particular, a really dear friend who I would talk to pretty regularly before the process of what it's just kind of like, what the experience is like for her personally, why people become therapists, what it is like to go through that process. We would talk at times also while filming as well on occasion, not necessarily like colleagues, but we were just talking, to sort of map through some of her struggles. Was any of Brooke modeled on anyone that I know? She wasn't modeled on anyone that I know, but she certainly, her experiences in real time were familiar to me and my own walk at that particular moment of time in my life. I could understand and recognize a lot of the Brooke out of session storyline as far as what pain and loss looks like, feels like, what it's like to lose track of your pain, and what that can result in if you aren't careful.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But I will also say this, because we've had conversations since the show has come out, people who have said to me, like, that is one dressed therapist. And I say, my therapist isn't always, and I'm like, mine doesn't either, but I actually do know one of the three people who I was referencing who is a psychotherapist, always is done to the nines.
To the nines.
Always done to the nines.
Yes. Was that a conscious choice for Dr. Brooke to be so put together?
Was it a conscious choice? Yes. Our costume designer, Tiffany Hasborn, had a very specific and clear vision of what she wanted to present as the world of Dr. Brooke. And I think it supported who she was and this idea of the excellence that not only existed within Brooke's home, but the excellence that exists within Black excellence.
Hey, yeah.
And,
Yes.
this is a woman who puts a great deal of effort in presenting like all is fine. And not just fine, perfect. And from her home to her costumes, because I do think of them as that. This is an armor she puts on. And this is how she prepares herself, not only for going into work, but to just get through the day. And that's the nail is not out of place, the hair is not laid, the face will be beat, all of it. I did not always believe that it was because that was her passion, but that was more her protection.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and that relentlessness of the expectation of Black excellence being above reproach at all times.
Well, absolutely. And you think about it, obviously in this space, I don't have to say it, but the numbers are the numbers. And that such a small few exist in that space already will amplify, I think, what that excellence is going to be, right?
Right.
And Brooke is not unaware. She's a very smart woman. She is not unaware of what those numbers are. She is not unaware that she sits in a seat far too often occupied by too few people who look like herself. She is aware of those things. She is aware also of her own life story and backstory and her own home life and that excellence of her father and an architect, another profession that you understand. So it's there is a lot built into that story intentionally of how she both keeps herself and keeps her home and what those two presentations mean. In a time of pandemic, where we all know we're wearing sweatpants and T-shirts.
Yes.
So,
I was like, is this the bar in LA?
No one is doing it. It's we've all, jig is up. We've all abandoned this. We've all abandoned this. And you're still persisting with this. And then two, there's something for me so beautiful about the clothes and so beautiful about the home and then strangely off about both. When we're not supposed to be seeing either, at least this part of her life. We're not supposed to be seeing her home. She has an office somewhere in Santa Monica.
Yes.
But nothing is out of place here. Who lives like that?
Yeah.
And why?
Oof. I mean, I could talk to you about the clothes forever, but what has been your relationship to therapy?
I go. Full stop.
Yes.
I go. I believe in it. I think it is incredibly useful. Clarifying is the next word that came in my mind. And then there's something really wonderful about feeling completely heard. Not understood, because I'm not sure if that happens in there. Jury's still out on that.
Right.
I'm not a therapist. I'm not a therapist, just play one on TV. But do feel heard and not with any condition on it.
Yeah.
And I think everybody could benefit from that.
I mean, I think that idea of being witnessed is huge. And I would love to hear more from you about what you've said in other interviews, that this was one of the hardest things that you've ever done. So what felt hard for you in this? What made this a difficult job?
It was the first time, y'all, where like I didn't feel like the space was so great between me and the character, kind of almost going back to this thing about Dr. Brooke and the costumes of protections. I don't think I realized that like characters before have been almost like a costume. Do you know what I mean? If you make sense, if that makes sense. And this was like going into performance at times with no costume on. So a lot of characters I played have either have been entirely real. So it's like there's a boundary right around like how the play space of sorts, because it's like I can't suddenly show up playing Shirley Chisholm with like locks or something. Like it's like that's not who that woman was, right? Or it is a character of invention. So it's like, yes, there are things that I can connect with and find, but some of it is just dreamed up. You know what I mean? I don't know where it came from. Versus in real time, there is a lot of what she is experiencing and going through in her story in terms of pain and loss that I also was going through at the time, you know. Right before we started shooting, I had just lost my mother. And it was wild to me to be feeling pain, feeling loss. I know what those things feel like. I know what it also feels like to feel like you're losing track of your pain, but to be watching someone doing it in another way and further down the road. That was the thing that was like, I'm not making this up. I'm not reaching elsewhere for it. You know what I mean? It's like the choice of honesty is not like, I've seen some character in my mind and I have to just dive in fully honest to who that woman is. Suzanne Crazy Eyes Warren, fearlessly, is one type of honest. Another type of honest is like, you having to decide now, Uzo, are you going to give what is actually the reality of this feeling that you know, or manufacture it into something else because it's safer?
Oh, man.
You know? And it's like, no, actually, what you feel, you're going to have to offer that because that's actually the truth. And that's why it was hard, because it's like, it's almost like you're going through your own therapy on screen.
Yeah. I mean, the level of vulnerability and the intimacy of that as you are in it, I mean, I can't even imagine thinking about the loss of a mother. I mean, especially one as beloved as your mom seems to be to you, can just be this devastating process in so many complex ways. So how did you decide to continue with this role and bringing the reality and the presence of your loss into this work that you were doing, this part of you that you were presenting to the world?
When this project came to me, it was so crazy because nobody knew that my mother was sick. There's a very small circle in my friends and family group who knew, right? And it was so like mind-blowing, mind-shattering, because it felt like maybe this is the healing I've been needing. And I can't describe it any other way other than maybe like the artist way of like, I think how I got through it is kind of how artists make art anyway. There is a reason catharsis is attached to that space, right? The art space. And I got through it the only way I know how to get through it, which is to use my body, my voice, my expression to help me process in the way that I could understand it. But I know that what I needed to do was to put it somewhere
Sure.
because the pain was so much.
Yeah.
And the power of it was so much. And the power of her life was so much. It's a big woman. It's a force of nature in the best way. When I say force of nature, I mean mother, not hurricane, you know? And so it was like, when, going back to the earlier question, we were talking about like when the decision was made for me, or decision was made by me to put my truth into it, I could feel like the layers stripping back. By the end, whatever had made that vacuumous hole, it started to feel like it was filling.
Yeah.
It's a wonder because it's like the project itself had so many legs to it. You know, it's like we had 2 days for production per episode. And as you know, we're sitting down just talking for the however many pages. And so there's a lot of dialogue and material to learn in that time. And some things I even think about now in reverse. It's like, I was like, whoa, this is grueling. I was like, buckle up. You got to learn, all, you know, I have to take every minute that I have and I have to learn these lines. And I need, you know, I had my incredible assistant on set with me, Maydell Clarice, who is like, honestly, a guardian angel of some kind. She has wings and they come in the form of unicorn colored braids.
Yes.
We would just drill and drill and drill this material between takes, before set and hair and makeup. After production, we'd be in the trailer working 30 minutes to an hour on the weekends every day, 4 days, Saturday, 4 days, Sunday. Work, nonstop, half of lunch. And I thought about it later and I was like, was the load that great or did I need that much distraction?
Huh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Like, I know that I didn't feel the same thing I know that I felt before we started. That was like a whole human being's worth of space.
The enormity of
you
that.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oof. We have one more question. I mean, this has been so beautiful. I guess I'm interested in what the show means to you and what you hope it will mean to the viewers.
What the show means to me is it's an opportunity to say out loud that it is okay to not be okay. It is an opportunity to not only say that you don't have to suffer in silence, but to actually watch what suffering in silence looks like and to really realize how loud it is. Like, you might think it's so quiet, but like if somebody's really paying attention and watching, it's actually very loud. It will become loud eventually at some point. Whether if it starts quiet, it will become very loud, audible almost. And so then from that, I guess my hope is that I hope that people realize that not being okay is actually giving yourself the permission to take the road towards being better. I don't know if, perfect, not, what is it? Progress, not perfection. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing,
Yes.
I hope that it will lead towards people realizing that it doesn't have to always be the biggest version of what we've always considered mental health to mean. That mental health is actually quite individual, quite personal. And whatever that is for you, you are worth exploring that. And that, like, whatever stigma, idea, whatever that we attach to it, you can hopefully free yourself of it. That's my real hope, especially because now, today, here we are, and one of the great equalizers around the globe has been the pandemic and has really brought to the front this conversation of mental health, that because we were all running around distracted, weren't having the time to pause and really discuss some of the cultural norms that maybe perhaps need to be re-examined beyond mental health. And because of that, I hope we now have created the space for that stigma to be lifted. So, and my hope is that a show like In Treatment can spark that conversation.
Definitely thinking about that theme of mental freedom.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
I think it is doing that. And it's a beautiful thing to witness. And it's, been a beautiful thing to have this podcast and be with Dr. Janelle and to now talk to you and to be Black people in a space talking about mental health, which was not happening 10 years ago either. Maybe not even 5 years or last year, but it's
Okay.
But I think that your wish for the viewers and the show, I think, is definitely coming into fruition. And so we're just really grateful to have this opportunity to share space with you. And thank you for just giving us such beautiful insight into the show and into your life and to sharing yourself with us. It means more than we have time to express.
Yeah. Thank you for making that choice to bring your real experience into what you did.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And thank you for doing this work.
Wow. I mean, she's an amazing woman. I'm so happy that we finally got to have her on the show. I just can't believe it.
Yeah.
And now we're going to transition into talking about how the season wrapped up for the stories of all of her clients.
Yeah, it seemed like, perhaps with the exception of Colin, which we'll get into, this week Brooke was really trying to steady the ship, and that involved ending some therapeutic relationships, or at least considering ending them.
Yes, I was really interested in the way that Brooke gets Eladio to come to his own conclusions about them needing to end their work together. So let's play a little bit of that part where Brooke pretends to be a friend to coax him towards that realization.
So your rich therapist who lives and works in the Black Beverly Hills, and you pay her how much an hour?
$275.
$275? Jesus Christ.
Well, it's worth every fucking penny. She's kind. She's kind and she cares. She paid for me to see one of her colleagues who's incredible.
Paid? What do you mean?
Well, it means that all this class shit that you talking about is actually kind of unfair because she literally paid for me to see a psychiatrist that I otherwise couldn't afford because that's how much she cares.
And isn't that, I don't know, a little weird?
Weird how?
And how did your very last session with her go?
This isn't fair.
Yeah. So, what are you thinking, Brandon? I see your wheels turning.
I mean, I thought that, we've seen role play go terribly wrong with these two.
He's like, let's not do a role play.
So I was a little nervous about this attempt to role play again. It was obviously, I think, successful, we come to realize. But I think that Dr. Brooke feels like she has her wits about her in how she's doing this. Like that there felt like a sensitivity. I mean, leading up to the role play, I really felt like she was conscious of him. Like, this is even before where she goes like, can I disagree with you? Is it okay for me to empathize with you? Like, she's asking these really important questions to, soften him a little bit and open him in a more organic way. What did you think?
Oh, I love that idea of really trying to soften him in this organic way, especially with the last week. We saw this desire to pull away really suddenly in a way that I think worried both of us, where it felt like it would be another rupture. There would be that kind of suddenness.
Yes.
And this felt so much more intentional. It felt like she was so much more present, and it felt like there was like a loving warmth in it, right? And this clarity as she was in her role as a psychologist and her skill as a psychologist, to see this as a process of opening the path for his own realization.
Yeah.
And being there walking alongside of him.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's also different too with this iteration of a role play is that Eladio had some willingness as well. There was a lot of hesitation on his side in the earlier weeks. And so I think that was also part of the success of this, is that he showed some willingness and she listened to that.
Yeah.
To listen to each other. That's a good rule of thumb in general.
You'd like to see that. Well, I mean, and I wonder, because it, of course, made me think about the endings of therapeutic relationships, especially for those where you feel that depth of connection and all of the different ways that therapy ending can look and can feel. You know, I can think about it from both like the clinician side and from the client side, how that feels to come to the end of a therapeutic arc, right?
Yeah.
And the complexity of emotions that can come up with that, and also some of that resistance that can come up.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. You know, I think my therapist, I have a hard time just being like, that's tragic and that's sad. And my therapist has really done a good job of helping me realize that it's okay for things to be sad and okay for things to be tragic, and it's okay to acknowledge that a severing of a relationship is tragic. And I think that's what we're witnessing, is that, you know, or it really does suck here. You know, Eladio's found somebody that he connects to. Brooke has found someone that she connects to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the connection has some strains around it, and it's not necessarily the healthiest connection. It doesn't change how painful it is to choose to end that connection.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so I think what we witness is them having to hold space for those two things, like the pain of ending this, but also the importance of ending this.
I imagine somewhere that your therapist is like cheering, right? Listen to BKG talking about the spectrum of human emotions and experiences. Like,
the visual of my therapist cheering for me, it's like really comforting.
I mean, real talk, we sometimes do.
Yes. Those of us who love our therapists, there's nothing higher than your therapist being like, great job. You're like, thank you. Oh my God, really?
We try not to do it because we're like, it's not about our reaction. How does it feel for you? But if we're behind, if I got my headphones on and you don't know that, I'm going, yes, listen to that. Yeah. That sadness does accompany the end of a relationship that had meaning and weight, and that's part of your authentic experience. That's awesome.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. 1,000%. It's also interesting kind of in the ending of their transference, that like maternal son transference, it is still very parental to kind of like let him go fly, you know, to really say, I'm going to let you go spread your wings. And I believe that you have everything you can. So it was kind of like a final maternal moment that she got to pass along to him.
Yeah.
One that I think supports him and doesn't harm him, which was beautiful.
That moment where, you can see how transference and countertransference actually can come into the therapeutic work in a way that can feel healing, right? If it is something that you have that presence and awareness and intentionality. And I think what Uzo was saying earlier about the difference between losing track of your pain, right? The ability to feel like you see and are sitting with and engaging with your pain in a conscious way. Because oftentimes, you know, as psychologists, we won't necessarily share about ourselves unless we feel it has a therapeutic purpose.
Sure.
But she still asked for that permission because I imagined that she felt like it was extremely important for the closing of that arc for him to understand a little bit more of the background of who she was as a human and how she had lost track of her pain at this point.
Yeah. So let me actually just like widen this a little bit. We're talking about the ending of this therapeutic relationship. So I want to ask you, Dr. Janelle, what is the appropriate way to go about ending a relationship with a client?
I don't think there's a single right way. Of course, you knew I was going to say such a shrinky answer. There's as many right ways as there are humans on Earth.
Wow. Frustrating.
But I think that some of the themes that are similar in the ending is, firstly, that it's there's some consciousness to it, that the decision to come to the ending that you have given it some thought. And then there's also the gut reaction to it, your emotional space, and not being surprised if there's a tension point between feeling that it's time and feeling that you're ready to continue the work that you've been doing in therapy on your own, or, know first, like being able to know that you can take a break and always come back, right, if you would need to. But sometimes there can also be that counter tension as well of how scary that can be to let go of something that has felt good or safe or empowering in many ways. And then I think that it is the ability to have a discussion with your therapist about what is next. If you're terminating therapy because it wasn't a good fit or you weren't meeting your therapeutic goals, I think that people often underestimate how much you can communicate with your therapist and bring that into the room, right?
Yeah.
Being able to say, I either feel that I'm ready or I feel like I need something different. And so that can be part of your therapeutic work is navigating the negotiation of closure. And if you've noticed that that's something hard for you to do, then in some ways that's like the big boss level of your therapeutic work. Like if goodbyes are hard for you, if being able to name that you're not getting what you need is hard for you, that is a huge thing that you can bring into the termination process with your therapist and work through.
Yeah, I'm shaking at the thought of that. You're not doing what I thought you were going to do, or like you're not meeting my needs or whatever. It's a scary thing to walk in and say, but also I think important too.
Yeah.
Important to know that you deserve to be able to express that, and it doesn't mean that you're saying the therapist is bad.
Yeah.
Or, like those two things don't have to always equal. And I think that is the fear around termination at times is that you terminating that therapist is a reflection of the therapist's worth, or you don't want to hurt their feelings. And it's like, no, like there is a separation here that's allowed to have where like this may not actually be the right fit for you.
And really, a good therapist should welcome that because really, I mean, not every therapist is going to be the right fit for what you need in that moment, in that way. And the being able to do the work is what's so important. And that was what was really wonderful about watching Eladio and Dr. Brooke go through this, where you're able to see that ending a therapeutic arc doesn't need to be hurtful or angry or disrespectful interaction in any ways. And unfortunately, that's the experience that many of us have when there are endings in a relationship. And in many ways, it could be a model for what a transition in a relationship can be in other places in your life. That it can offer a space for closure, transition, and really reflection on what the work was and what you learned through it.
But I think people get afraid about termination and about hurting people's feelings and about, being not liked, or afraid that like your therapist might be mad at you. And honestly, if your therapist is going to be mad at you, there are, again, more evidence as to why they're not the right person, because
A good signal that the work was not going to be good.
yes, because any therapist should be like, yeah, I want to support you ultimately to getting to your next level and to expanding. If you can't do that here, it doesn't matter where you do it. I just want to support you in doing it.
Oh, yeah. That was so beautiful. Like, Brandon. No, and thinking about then, and you see with Dr. Brooke, she made sure that Eladio had referrals. She was very conscientious. She built that bridge to the transition. And oftentimes people wonder, if I stop work with this clinician, I'm going to have to start over from the beginning.
Sure.
And one of the things that I like to assure folks is you don't need to start from the beginning. You can start wherever it feels right. And oftentimes your former therapist will be willing to connect with your new therapist and share what they saw and what you had been working on, and kind of help ease the transition and be a warm handoff. So I think there's lots of ways to make that happen.
So speaking of a therapist-client relationship that might not be good, we have got to talk about Colin, because I thought we were done with him, but we not, okay? So after all of Colin's narcissism, his sexual harassment of Brooke, and general resistance, she takes him back as a paying client. Let's hear a clip of that moment.
You want me because you can't have me.
I'm growing. I don't know why you can't see that, but I am. I'm changing. You are changing me. I suck. I know it.
Guessing at what I want to hear.
Well, what do you want to hear?
The truth.
Well, what is the truth?
Only you can know, Colin.
I hate myself. That's the truth.
No, it isn't.
No, I'm cruel. I know that.
Goodbye,
No,
Colin.
I think people are stupid. I think people are stupid. I hate them for it. I hate how easy it is to manipulate and to lie to them. I hate how soft and impressionable and trusting they are. It makes me want to take advantage of them. It makes me want to punish them, to find some way for them to pay the price for just how stupid they are. Everyone, my employees, my clients, my lawyers, Hannah, you. I know you're not now, but you asked for the truth.
Stop.
Say something. Come on, why can't you say anything?
I'm just tired. I have so much work to do. I appreciate your honesty. I'll see you next week. You can show yourself out.
We'll see you next week.
Yikes. What do we make of Brooke taking Colin back after all of that?
I mean, one of the things that really disturbed me is that he's aware of the fact that he has some leverage over her. And he, at one point, I think, asks if she signed off on his paperwork, wondering if she thought that he was going to tell on her, which,
Right.
I mean, it's not allowed, like, within our licenses. You can't drink with a client late at night. Like, that can be an ethical violation.
That sounds off.
Yeah, so that definitely stood out for me as a red flag. I was worried about that. What did you think?
I mean, I said it to y'all off air. I'll say it to everybody on air. Colin we would have fought. We would have scrapped. My New York ass would have been tussling with him around my nice ass house in Baldwin Hills. Furniture would have been moving, as we like to say. But I joke about that. Although no, I'm not really joking. But what's interesting to me about that is Brooke doesn't have that space to do that. You know, if she were to do that, she would be in her right in the way that he was, one, not leaving when she said to leave, putting his hands on her, being very aggressive and forward. If she wanted to pop him, she would have been in her full right. But being the Black person in the space, she would have lost more.
Yeah.
I think about that, if we pull out of the show and kind of thinking about what's going on in our country and in the world and what Black people navigate, we are often spoken to in such disrespectful ways, publicly, blatantly, overtly, and aren't able to retaliate or have to be very conscious about the ways in which we retaliate, as in having to control ourselves, having to really process and say, please leave still, even if somebody is crossing a very clear boundary over and over. And so that was really painful to watch, to know that this man is crossing boundaries left and right. And Dr. Brooke, for reasons of the ethical reasons is probably also part of it. But even if she didn't have that drink, I think there would still be a consideration that she would have to make.
Yeah.
Do I throw this piece of furniture at him, or do I ask him to kindly leave?
And that feeling of disempowerment then that comes with it, where, this sense that I have to, again, be above reproach. I need to figure out a way to pull myself in, even when this person, Colin, is assaulting her. He is sexually harassing her. He is in her home, degrading her and really ignoring her in a way that, I mean, and I couldn't help but watch this from the idea of how might this look different if this was a small blonde therapist at her home,
Sure.
right? And how might we perceive the need to kind of protect her from this man, this character who's really described feeling like he takes what he wants. Is she safe? And for me, that was like really, really hard to watch. And then it ending with her agreeing to see him again and continue the work. I think it was painful because part of me wanted to kind of counter this narrative that, she has to be this strong Black woman who can hold her own against this dude who has admitted that he has hurt and manipulated and has no respect for her or his wife or anybody around him, and then yet that she's going to be the strong one who shows up and continues to try to change him.
Yeah. The question becomes, why, Dr. Brooke? Right? Like, you're like, okay, we got to this end point, like, let him go. But then she does make the choice. And it's like, well, what is the motive behind continuing to work with this person? If you identify him as a narcissist, if he's gotten to the truth, or what we are assuming is the truth, which is that he's just at base a dick, like he gets off on that, you know, why continue to work with him? And we don't know like how her wheels are turning. She's like, I will continue, even though he's crossed all these boundaries. I'm going to continue to work with him. I wonder what her thinking is.
I want to be in her consultation group. I want to hear her think about that. Because by the end, I was like, especially when he went off on he mistreats people, he hates how easy they are to manipulate. Like all of these things that he said, I was like, we're talking sociopathy. Like we're looking at a sociopath. Like the superficial charm, the lack of empathy, the almost disgust at other people and seeing relationships as all instrumental to meeting your own needs and own goals, that moves beyond narcissism. And we're starting to look at like sociopathy or antisocial personality disorder.
Yeah. Shall we get to Layla?
Yeah, let's talk about Layla's episode now. Because there was a lot going on there, too, that could bring up some, distressing feelings. And you know how protective I feel. Layla brings out the Mama J in me.
Yes.
But I was so glad to see that hers had a much more peaceful ending.
Yeah. So in this episode, we see that Layla's grandmother shows up looking for her, and it finally gave us this fuller picture for the conversation we've been having about the burden of Black excellence and the effect of corporal punishment on young people. I actually want to play this clip of Rhonda explaining why she was so controlling of Layla.
Layla being all in her head all the time. In some ways, that's success. She's not stuck somewhere thinking about where her next meal is coming from, not counting the hours before the power is cut off. You think anybody ever asked me what my hopes were when I was growing up? They're gonna care what a half-starved little Black girl out of East Texas in the 60s wants out of life? Come on now.
And if they had asked, what did you want?
That's what I'm saying, Brooke. I didn't have dreams. All I have are the people I make, and I put every single thing I have into them. My child and the child of my child. And now, look, he's dead inside, and she is in the wind.
First of all, I do want to acknowledge the legend that is Charlayne Woodard. I just have to say, I was very excited to see her in the first week, but it was really, really satisfying to have this episode where we get to know Rhonda, but also witness the legendary Charlayne Woodard on screen opposite Uzo. I mean, that is just like. I was geeking out. I was geeking out. So let me say that first. But also, this was so painful to watch this scene And it goes to what we talked about with parents on pedestals and being superheroes and kind of not seeing their humanity and just kind of only seeing them as a parent, which is like perfect and expert. And what I saw in this was the real human, the real pain. Does, again, not excusing the ways in which she, quote unquote, made these people, but understanding why this was the way in which she chose to, again, make these people.
Oh, well, I mean, and like you said, not creating an excuse, but building this understanding of some of the trauma that she was intergenerationally passing down, and maybe not even within her conscious awareness. And I sort of hoped, I'm like, I hope that this is the beginning of continued therapeutic work for Rhonda.
Yeah.
To really be able to interrogate this question of, yes, when I was growing up, it was about me surviving. We were in a crisis state to stay alive.
Yes.
And that's what I learned. And you're talking about hope. You're talking about aspirations. You're talking about meaning, thriving. I don't have a template for how to even engage with the breadth of her granddaughter's experience of who she is and who she can be.
Yeah. Because what you really see too is that for Rhonda, I hate calling her by her first name. I'm like, Miss Rhonda.
Yeah, Miss Rhonda for sure. Let's do this. I was like, I felt it too. I was like, oh, you heard my
for Rhonda. I'm sorry, this feels so uncomfortable. For Miss Rhonda.
Let's say Miss Rhonda. My mom's listening and she'll be like, oh no.
Well, I'm gonna just say Miss Rhonda from here on. For Miss Rhonda, you know what was, she was talking about, being poor and not knowing where the lights are going on and like if you're gonna have food. And so for her idea of thriving is external, right? It never entered into the emotional life. It entered into, well, you have this bag and you got a house and you got clothes on your back, you got food as much as you want, you got this brand new Bentley. I'm doing right by you, and ignoring that, like, honestly, the car doesn't matter as much as the emotional life, right? They're like, Layla would be fine in a Prius. She don't need a Bentley. But a Bentley doesn't replace the emotional trauma, right, that both Miss Rhonda has experienced in her life and has never acknowledged, and the emotional trauma that her son, we are understanding, has experienced, and now Layla has experienced. That this lineage and this family has figured out how to grow their legacy externally, but has not figured out how to break the generational curse of the emotional trauma that the family has. That's the missing link.
Oh, I mean, and this is what Dr. Brooke and Layla are doing together because they're having this parallel process, right? Of Dr. Brooke looking and seeing that younger version of herself and having that lived experience that she brings into it. And really her being able to share and close the loop with Miss Rhonda in the conversation that she's having, really hoping to help her understand what freedom and what liberation, what thriving might look like and could be beyond all of these markers of success that we know are part of the master's tools, that it's money, that it is degrees, that it is sitting in a fancy house, right? And really helping to invite her. And you see towards the end, how she engaged and was able to listen to her granddaughter. But yeah, can we talk about Peru and Layla?
Oh yes, let's talk about Peru and Layla. Well, how did you feel? Because you just got so giddy. So I want you to talk about how you felt about Layla and Peru.
Well, I love Peru to begin with, but I for so long in so many of the episodes, I was worried about Layla and this painful transition that she's going through and her struggle to really know herself, which can come with such enormous psychic pain, right? Particularly where you feel this tension between what your family expects from you and what the world expects from you and what you want for yourself. And it felt really almost like wish fulfillment and fantastical to see that her work with Dr. Brooke unlocked this ability for her to pursue and chase after that sense of freedom and self-knowledge. And she's in Peru, so the whole time I was all worried, where is she? Is she okay?
Yes.
And it turns out that she's doing that thing that adolescents do, where they can really worry us, they can really scare us, but in some ways, if you trust in their ability to know and to do and have agency, she made it to Peru. She went.
Yeah. You know what I loved about the conversation between Dr. Brooke and Layla was, Dr. Brooke really laying out the evidence of like, you got to a new country, you got a new phone, like you figured out where to stay, like these things that you were afraid of doing. The evidence of your experience shows that you are capable and really being able. And I think she did something similar for Eladio. And I think that what therapy, I think at its best, can do is help us know how to identify those things. So as we doubt, as we move through our storms, if you will, I always say, like, as you move through your storm, just remember the last time you had a storm and you got through that. The evidence of your life shows that you get through things. And so to really take stock of those moments, and obviously the younger you are, not the less that you've gone through, but you may not be as quick to be able to identify it because there isn't as many big chapters, depending on, again, your circumstances. And Layla's had a pretty charmed circumstance, so she may not have felt like she's had as many moments to call upon. But the reality is she did. She has tons of moments to call upon. And this is just another one to show her that you know what you're doing and you know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then I do want to note that, like, I'm really grateful that Miss Rhonda, handled the phone conversation, but I also just loved when you're ready for a car, like, come see me.
A real car.
A real car. I was like, oh, Miss Rhonda's not coming back to therapy. That's the most. Miss Rhonda's done with therapy. She did it, and now she's going on her way. You felt in the episode Miss Rhonda kind of open up and reveal herself, and then kind of revert back to the external stuff being of importance, which honestly at that point I'm like, as long as Layla's safe and like she can give Layla her space, Miss Rhonda gonna do what Miss Rhonda gonna do. And she grown, so.
And I'm a relentless optimist because I'm like, you never know what seeds got planted. And she's constructing us like, when she was growing up, the idea of a Black woman in therapy was absolutely unheard of.
Yeah.
So even if it's just planting the seed that she may come back to in a different way, I'm hoping that this is not the end of therapy for Miss Rhonda.
You know what? I'm a hope as well. Absolutely. I think I was thinking about, like, if I was just Rhonda, I'd be like, listen, honey, I got my Bentley. I'll see y'all. I'm going to go enjoy my retirement. Goodbye.
Bye-bye now.
Well, I guess let's, I hate this part because it means that, we're getting closer to the end of our time together. But let's talk about the final episode of the season, which is Brooke's episode, where she finally makes the decision to reconnect with Rita after arguing all night with Adam. So let's actually hear a little snippet of the fight scene between Dr. Brooke and Adam.
You think I like it when you're drunk.
Oh, I know that you do.
I like it when you've had a drink. When we're laughing, having fun, we're relaxed. But you think I like it because it gives me an advantage. That you're dulled so I can shine.
I don't think that.
Let's be clear here. I never put a goddamn drink in your hand that you didn't ask for.
Yeah, but you never care to come around when I'm sober.
No, because that's when you leave me.
Oh, so we're gonna pretend like you could stop drinking when I decided to stop?
You never asked me to.
Get out.
I'm not the alcoholic here, you are. But somehow I get cast in the role as the fuck up, the fuck boy, the loser. Because that's easier for you. As long as you can keep on assuming that I can't give you what you need, you can keep me at arm's length. You get to stay safe. But what if that makes you bad for me?
Can we just sit down?
All I'm saying is we both know what this is. And it pisses me off when you act like the innocent. Shit, you called me 6 weeks ago.
And you came running!
You're welcome, because that's the dance we do.
All right, Adam.
Come on, Adam. I was okay. I don't know about you. But, I was shocked at how self-aware he was. How I did not think that I didn't think he was that plugged in. What about you?
I was surprised as well. And I think the fact that he was able to share it so clearly
Yeah.
and also really describe their cycle and the loop that they're in, where he's like, I see and I accept this for what it is.
Yeah.
Right. It's not lost on me that this is the dance that we have. And I'm here for it because I love you. And the times that we are together, it's worth it. And I was like, okay, Adam.
Yeah. But he also was like, I'm not the alcoholic. Like, he really identified, he advocated for himself in a way
Yeah.
that we hadn't seen. You know, we've been talking about Adam as maybe the relationship exists because Dr. Brooke has to be so excellent and aware in so many parts of her life, and it doesn't seem like she has to do that with Adam. She can kind of just like coast with Adam, and Adam kind
Yeah.
of provides this escape where she can just drink and be. But like this episode was like, no, Adam has some needs as well, and is aware of those needs and is conscious of those needs. And maybe this is more complicated than we as the audience and Dr. Brooke has been giving it credit for.
Yes. Well, I mean, and I think about what Dr. Brooks said in the episode where she did the therapy with herself. And she talks about the narrative that she had internalized, that in order to be lovable, she had to find ways to dim herself because others, especially her mom, couldn't handle how smart she was or how perceptive she was. And you see her carry that over to Adam, and Adam's like, nah, you got me fucked up, Dr. Brooke. Right? Like, Brooke,
Yes.
like, that's you bringing that into the narrative, that's not what I'm asking for from
Yeah.
you. Which really kind of then I wonder if that makes her take a step back, where that may have been the initiation of her really considering, then why am I falling into this loop and thinking about getting sober again, possibly.
Yeah. Well, I think what that fight did was show that they're existing in two different realities. And so I think there was a comfort when she thought there was the same reality, but now you're dealing with, oh, I'm actually in a different reality than this person who is the only person that doesn't seem to judge me for when I drink. And so now I might have to just reassess what's going on. What am I doing?
And why?
And why? And the why for it. Because now if like Adam also wants something more, or like then like what does that mean for Dr. Brooke? So what did you think about the phone call?
Oh yeah, the phone call. And I'm like, who's she calling? And I loved that it was Rita.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, I mean, that communicated to me this awareness that where she was, the pain had engulfed her in such a way that she hadn't attended to, that she might need to do some work and some continued exploration before reaching out to her son in a healthy way.
Sure.
That's how I read it. What did you think of her calling Rita? What did you make of it?
Rita is her rock.
Yeah.
You know? It's something that like Jen said I think it was last week or whenever we talked to Jen about, the people who are in the lives of someone who is an alcoholic or an addict are always rooting for them, And so that was really beautiful to see that Rita was still genuinely happy for that phone call.
Yeah.
And that love, especially in the first episode where we hear Dr. Brooke go, "You're not like a real friend."
She's like, wait, what?
But she is, and she is there to help Brooke along. But also in what we talked about in the beginning of the show, where we had like Colin and Layla who were against their will, and we saw how difficult therapy was when somebody is dragged there. I think that's the same thing here. Like Dr. Brooke had to be ready. There was no dragging her to, get help. She would have to be ready and willing in order for it to be meaningful and impactful.
Yes, and this idea of her coming to a place where not only relying on herself in this isolated, lonely space to be able to really open herself to the ability of being held by others.
Yeah.
I left hopeful that might be the next step for her because she had been keeping it together as much as she could. She had, she has the enormous ability for self-reliance. And the other side of that coin seems to be the vulnerability to let others see her and truly witness her. And then to witness as part of that, as it is the part for all of us as humans, our pain, right? And to get support in that.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful she and Rita are gonna chill, gonna watch, some more celestial events.
Yes.
And never break up ever again.
Ever again. That is our hope. That is our hope.
So we are almost done for today, and I can't believe it, but it's almost time to leave you, Brandon. And as always, I want to make sure that you have some resources and recommendations. But remember, this is not a replacement for therapy, so if you feel the need, please reach out to a mental health professional. All right, so first off, I want to make sure that you have the resources for Alcoholics Anonymous and also for Al-Anon. And Al-Anon is associated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but is for the family and the folks who are in the lives of those who might be struggling with addiction or substance use disorders so that they can get the support they need too, because that can come with a lot of strain. So both AA.org and Al-Anon.org are resources I want to make sure that you have. In a different direction, we've talked a lot about Black vulnerability and the way that particularly Black women can really embody their experience. And something that I'm loving is this anthology of different stories of Black women, and it's called You Are Your Best Thing, that focuses on vulnerability, shame, resilience, and the Black experience. And that is co-edited and brought together by Tarana, Burke, and Brene Brown.
Ugh, we love those two.
Yes, the two. And for so long, I'm like, I want to talk about vulnerability, but let's talk about Blackness and vulnerability as well. So it's happening. So check that out for sure.
Love that.
And one of my greatest hopes in doing this podcast was that this might spark an interest for someone who may want to start therapy after the conversations that we've had together, Brandon. So I want to make sure that you know where to begin because it can feel kind of daunting. So there are lots of different directories if you're looking for a therapist. One is inclusivetherapist.com, where you can search and try to find a therapist who might be a good fit. Therapy for Black Girls is incredible, another directory where you can search for mental health providers. And then Therapy Den. So hopefully you can use these resources if you want to start the journey in the process of beginning therapeutic work.
Wow, those are great.
You're great. And it looks like that's our time for now.
For now, but you can still find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. In Session is the official companion podcast for the HBO show In Treatment, and it's a production of HBO and Pineapple Street Studios. Our executive producers are Barry Finkel, Max Linsky, and Jenna Weiss-Berman. Our lead producer is Melissa Slaughter. Associate producers are Audrey No and Taylor Hosking. Darby Maloney is our editor, and our engineer is Raj Makija. Our senior managing producer is Gabrielle Lewis. Production music is courtesy of HBO, and you can watch all the episodes of In Treatment on HBO Max. Dr. Janelle, this is the sad part.
Brandon.
I'm gonna miss you.
I'm gonna miss you too.
But we're gonna do this again.
Yes. Promise?
Promise.
Pinky promise.
Pinky promise.
All right, see ya.
I'll see you later. Bye.